We continue looking ahead to the expected interest rate decision from the South African Reserve Bank. Economists forecast yet another hike this afternoon. In November, the repo rate went up by 75 basis points to reach 7%. We chat to Black Business Council CEO Kganki Matabane about their expectations. Appreciate your time this morning. Now, have you prepared for far ahead of today's monetary policy?
Good morning, Hugo, and your viewers. We've been preparing for some times, and we can say we're prepared, but we're not prepared for the bad news, because when you listen to almost all the economists, they sort of concur that there's a need. According to the Reserve Bank monetary policy requirements, there's a need that the interest rate must increase. They are now discussing by how much, and for us that is another bad news after the bad start to the year when Eskom is increasing the rates by 18% and any other related thing related to the municipalities and others is going to increase. So it looks like the year is going to be as bad as, or even worse than last year. So it's bad news, I think, for us as business, because we're still reeling from the impact of COVID. We're reeling from the impact of the increase in fuel prices and just the dysfunctional state that we're in. There are just many costs that you have to budget for. The roads are in a mess. So when you are running any business that has got transport costs in it, you have to make sure that you increase the budget for tires and other things, because anything can happen. So yeah, it doesn't look like it's a good year this year.
Now, Kganki, we talk about, well, there are two parts to this equation, obviously, and one of those is that as a business, as the interest rates go up and as inflation keeps on track on where it is at the moment, you have to try and manage those costs. But the other side also is that the spending power of the consumer diminishes. Now, as business, how do you strike that balance?
Yeah, I think the impact is different from for both big and small business. So when you're a big business, because you've got reserves, you are able to cushion some of the costs, and also remember most of the small businesses buy their goods from big businesses. So when big business decides to say we can't cushion this anymore, the only thing that we can do is to increase the costs. It means then the people who are running small businesses are in a very, very difficult position. And when you're a small business, you've got no space basically to play. So when there's an increase in interest rates, it means you must increase the prices so that you can try and recover some of these costs. And that will affect you, because also you don't have a preferential rate at banks. You probably even you are even charged more. So when interest rate goes up, you have a challenge, and then you are your consumers, because you are also competing with big business. And if big business decide not to increase their prices, you increase your prices, you're going to be out of business. And I think the challenge is that most of the youth and are employed by small businesses, because of the entry requirements are a bit accommodating. So we've got already 70% youth unemployment. Once this kicks in, that is going to go up. And when we look at where we are as a country, looking at the impact of load shedding and other things, yeah, it's just not good news.
Now, when you're sitting amongst yourselves as members of the Business Council, what conversations are you having around innovation and potentially energy sources? Because obviously, if you are on the main Eskom grid, it's a massive struggle with projections that for the next 2 years minimum, or for the next 12 months, there's going to be fixed load shedding. So whether it's at stage 2 or stage 3, are there the conversations you're having around alternative sources of energy?
Yes, I think what we are doing is basically encouraging those who can afford to get themselves mainly solar, because even generators as well, some of the generators are affordable. But a micro business is likely not to afford those things, and most of them, as you may have seen covered in the papers, they are closing down because they just can't afford to buy to increase cost anymore. So what we do basically, we've been working with the Eskom and others who are involved with Eskom issues to say the first price in South Africa as things stand, so that you can make sure that small businesses are accommodated, is to fix Eskom. Because the majority of our members, small businesses, depend on Eskom. Without Eskom, they are not going to be able to survive. They can't afford anything else extra, because that means they must increase their prices, and their competitors are not going to increase their prices, then they'll be out of business.
Now, one of the things that I was thinking about is the issue of special economic zones, such as what you have in Richards Bay and other parts of the country. Are those then conversations that organizations start to have in order to mitigate certain costs? Do you look, for instance, if you're a big business, to a country that has lower labor costs in order to subcontract or outsource some of the elements of your business? Are these part of the conversations?
Yes, we do participate in conversations about the economic zones, and unfortunately, when we look at most of the economic zones, they're basically struggling to attract customers, and then I think it's expected, because it takes time for any business to make a decision about their location. So if you've already chosen location A, and an economic zone is at the location B, it's not an easy decision just to say tomorrow we're moving from here to there. It usually takes time. But now the complications is that if your business is not thriving and is struggling, instead of being worried about moving to the economic zone, you're actually worried about being sustaining yourself and surviving. So most of the small businesses are in a survival mode, and as such, they are likely not to think about moving, because the initial cost of moving are much more than the savings that they're going to make over a long period, because they may not even be there over a long period. So it's a challenging thing to run small businesses now. Just to give you an example, there are so many people who are running, for example, funeral parlors, and then what do you do? Do you close down? Do you tell the customers to bury people within a day? It's just a bit complicated and challenging, and then until and unless Eskom is resolved, because all these other solutions about solar and wind and others, they are only going to come on board maybe in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And then some of them, as we know, they are not even baseload electricity. They're not even going to solve the problem. So as a country, I think we need to encourage everyone to say, let's focus on Eskom. Those who can afford the solars, let's get the solars on our roofs, so that we can reduce demand. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that Eskom is able to resolve its issues, so that the megawatts that are installed are being utilized. Because as you know, we've got around 45,000 megawatts installed, but Eskom cannot even provide around 25,000. So there's a huge problem that needs to be resolved.
Kganki Matabane, Black Business Council CEO, giving us his thoughts ahead of the Monetary Policy Committee announcement.